Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Donnelly, director of the Frost Place Poetry Seminar. Welcome to the first evening of readings of the 2023 seminar. These readings are streamed live on the Frost Place Facebook page and will be archived there for viewing later. If you're looking for an online summer poetry conference where your work will get the focused attention of some of America's finest poet teachers, please check out the poetry seminar at frostplace.org. We'd love to have you join us next year. And now, please welcome faculty member Angela Narciso Torres.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first extend my thanks to the Frost Place Seminar, to Maudel, Saint Maudel, as we like to call her, for having our backs this whole week, starting day one and onward. Thank you to Director Patrick Donnelly for inviting me in the first place and for being such a gracious host and for welcoming us also so graciously. I'd like to thank Rena, my co-reader tonight. Well, she's not reading tonight, but my co-teacher in this workshop. And I'm so excited to hear her poetry. Rena has inspired me from the first day that I met her. And of course, thank you to my workshop group, from whom I've already learned so much, and it's only been one day. So I'm going to be reading from my latest book, What Happens Is Neither. This morning, Patrick led a wonderful presentation on poetry sequences, and we talked about structures of manuscripts. And I wanted to share that this book, because it's about grief and loss, it is a book that I dedicated to my parents, whom I lost in 2019 within 11 days of each other. This is a book that is about grief and loss, but it is also about rebirth and reconstructing the self after loss. And I decided not to put the book in sections and not to have a linear trajectory, because like grief, the book moves in waves, in ebbs and flows. The title of the book, What Happens Is Neither, comes from a line I heard from one of my yoga teachers during a meditation. She said, "What happens is neither the end nor the beginning." And that resonated with me. And this was years ago. It stayed with me. And I thought, this is so much like the experience of grief and of life in general. Loss is a precondition of life, and so is rebirth. And so everything that happens is just life. So I'll start with a titular poem of the book. The first line of the poem is also the title. So I'll just read it through. What happens is neither the end nor the beginning. Yet we're wired to look for signs. Consider the peonies. One makes a perfect bud after months of nothing. Another's leaves are ringed with black rot. How can I not think end? How can I not say beginning? Leaves fall when days shorten because a tree must reduce to its tough parts: twig, branch, bark. My mother sleeps away the daylight. She nods off while chewing a spoonful of fish and rice, her head a peony gone to seed. Father calls to say she doesn't recognize him. Turning to him, she cried out, certain a stranger was in her bed. He played his violin till she slept, a leaf in late fall curling into itself. In autumn, chlorophyll disappears, canceling green from leaves so yellow and magenta can blaze. In my mirror, I see her, the smile that favors a cheek, eyes slanting in the shape of small fish we eat for breakfast. Trees know best the now of things. What goes on has been going on for centuries. Washing dishes, I rest a foot on my standing leg. A fork clangs on the tile. I rinse a cracked cup. I try not to think of endings. Earlier today, we were talking about the golden shovel form that was invented by American poet Terence Hayes. And we were also talking about how form is useful in talking about different subjects, and especially subjects that are emotionally charged. The book covers many kinds of loss, not just the deaths of my parents, but also the loss of our former self. Um, the borrowed line for my golden shovel comes from the Yeats poem, The Circus Animal's Desertion. And the line is, now that my ladder's gone, I must lie down where all the ladders start, in the foul rag and bone shop of the heart. So the line I borrowed is just that last segment, the foul rag and bone shop of the heart, which is also the title of the poem. So try to listen for the words of that line at the end of each line of the poem, and I'll try to emphasize them too in my reading. The foul rag and bone shop of the heart. I'm not just talking about the sleepless days and nights, the nonstop nursing, the foul smelling diapers. I'm talking of how my body reeked, a soaked rag of curdled milk, drool, and leaky nappies, and how I'd wake already beats beyond blood, bone, and breath, the baby still at my breast. But when I pushed past a shop window the other day, I turned to do a double take, a glimmer of a woman I once knew. No, it wasn't just the wind-tossed hair, the morning-weary face, but oh, the heart, the heart. This book is dedicated to my mother and father. My mom was, how can I describe her? Well, I'll just show you her picture. She was the queen of side-eye. Can you see? I'm still practicing that side-eye myself. I never quite mastered it, but she was the life of the party. She was the table where everyone wanted to sit, was the one where my mom was sat telling stories. So when she started to lose her language to dementia, I took it upon myself to start recording what I could of the woman I knew, the mother I grew up with, her stories, her favorite perfume, the recipes, the piano pieces she loved to play. And I did this over a period of 10 to 12 years that she was living and struggling with dementia. And so this next poem, actually, I wrote it also over a period of 10 years. It feels like it's been revised so many times, but this is its final form, and it appears in the book, and it's called Sundowning for my mother, Carmen. Sundowning. The sweetest meat clings to the bone, my mother says, knifing her steak. Carmen, silver spade on my tongue. Mahjong nights, her mother and father gone, she cried herself to sleep, blamed in the morning for her mother's losing hand. Unlucky tears. The sweetest meat, she begins at dinner, tearing off a chicken leg. What will she recall by morning? Named for our mother, our Lady of Mount Carmel, she pinned brown scapulars under our shirts, wet stamps that cleaved to our backs. Carmen, prayer on the breath. Amid potted ferns, she works on a jigsaw puzzle. Bizet on the radio. Unable to sleep, she made me lie next to her. My brothers clambered the banyan trees. My legs twitched, a broken clock. Her kisses are guava and rust. She sings kundimans her mother sang. Sampaguita, dahil sa'yo, saan ka man. Sunday morning, puzzle pieces strewn on yesterday's news. Maria Callas on the phonograph. Carmen. Citrine fire. When she plays the piano, the lovebirds fall silent. Alabaster eggs tremble in glass bowls. Afternoons, she woke with an urge to bite the brown loaf of my arm. The marks on my flesh faded by sundown. The sweetest meat clings, she insists, peels a mango, amber rivers tracing her elbows. A trail of l'air du temps wafts in her wake. I follow it to her room, dab the scent on my wrists and throat. Evenings, she sang kundimans, hating gabi, nasaan ka irog, Carmen, Song of the Mangosteen Moon. Before you go, I want to give you something. She hands me a thimble painted with a map of Cuba. We've never been to Cuba. In the dream, a sister pours rosary beads into her cup hands. Upon waking, a dead wasp curled in her palm. So, yeah, I'm aware that I'm reading a lot of poems about grief and loss. And today in workshop, somebody read a poem about joy, and everybody was, I just saw the room light up, and someone commented, it's so hard to write poems about joy. And the person who was being workshopped said, oh, I write sad poems too, as if it were a requirement for poets. I thought it was just so poignant, that comment, because I feel that way sometimes, but I'm training myself to just hold space for grief and to not apologize for writing sad poems, because that's sometimes what poetry needs to be. It needs to be a container for grief. And sometimes in reading, we honor that space, and we honor that space within us and in others who hold a similar space. So here's another poem about my grandfather, who, when I was a student in Boston, I knew that he was, in his last days. And one day I received a call that he had passed. And lo and behold, 2 days later, a letter arrived from him. It was typewritten. And so this poem means a lot to me because, as you can see, I'm obsessed with old typewriters. My father had a Smith Corona when I was growing up, and I typed on it. I typed some of my papers on it in the time before computers. Yes, I am that old. So since he passed, I've been collecting these for years, but since he passed, the collection has increased. And I can only attribute that to the grief process. I think it was Rumi who said, if you follow your heart, you can't go wrong. I'm paraphrasing, but they give me joy, and they give me a very visceral connection to my dad and to my grandfather. So here's translating the dead. 2 days after my lolo died, his letter arrived from Manila. Sky blue aerogram, trifolded and sealed by the aunt who kept vigil, typing for him what words he had left on the Smith Corona with a broken lowercase I that pierced holes through paper. I remember high school nights finding him still awake, listening for my backpack's thud on the wood floor, leading to his bedroom. Slowly he'd rise, a smoker's cough clearing his throat, his voice tunneling in half dark. Are you here now, Iha? A direct translation from Tagalog. Nariyan ka na, anak? Meaning, you're here? Meaning, I've been waiting, dear one. Holding the crinkled sheet against the October sky, I see another sky, deeper blue, pinpricks of light, shining like day-glow stars. Yes, Papa, I'm here. Okay. My script says drink water, so I'm going to do that. I forget. Poets always drink water during your readings. I tell you, it makes a world of a difference. I'm going to read some newer work now. This morning, hearing Patrick's beautiful presentation on the poetry sequence and his discussion of Japanese early poetry, I wanted to share this series of tanka poems that I had written during my COVID isolation. I was diagnosed with COVID in October 2021 and was sentenced to a 10-day isolation period. It was back then. And I started writing these short messages to a friend. And she said, you know what? That one of the messages she said looked like a tanka. She's a Japanese poet who writes in English. And so she said, let's try to rewrite it. And we did it the 575 57577 syllabic form. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And then I started sending these to another friend, my Brazilian friend, Lucia from Boca Raton, Florida. And so we came up with this epistolary tanka form where I would write her, she would write a poem in response, and then she'd write another tanka, and then that would be sent back to B. And then so it was like an A, B, B, A, B, B, A kind of thing. And so I'd like to read that. And I'll start with a poem that I've written, and when I read in my voice, I'll be turning this way. And when I read in Lucia's voice, I'll turn my chair this way. Thank goodness I'm in a swivel chair today. This was Patrick's brilliant idea. Thank you, Patrick. The title is Dust of a Thousand Weathers, and this is just an excerpt. We went for 30 days, and I'm not going to subject you to 30 times 2 tanka. This is just maybe a rough third of it or less. Dust of a Thousand Weathers, an epistolary. Only the moon came over the hills, a good nurse in sensible shoes, my breath caught in the branches of my ribs. The only house I visit is you on the veranda, collecting the mountains. Pale light breathes in color, blue dress, the red heart of your shawl. The form will come, but the day brings no guarantees except whole mending peace. In crevices, rosemary embraces mustard and spirits. One day I could finish my sentences, the next. Today, a gray dove struts on the fence, unfolds its note to the wind. Milk white mist fringes the balcony, hands pressed to a chilled pane, to learn to speak quietly at such a distance to you. My nature is dust. Members of my clan, breadcrumbs rest in reunion. On the breakfast table, red jam configures the hours. To enter a garden of loss, the shyness of moss covering the ground, yet holding its own. I close the gates. At dawn, my eyes are green. You miss the daily things you can't do, held by doors or days, little things, pruning roses, salting a stew, how the mailbox creaked open. This bed of roses, the sea, a truck, ashes, soil, lettuce, nails, the wrong side of, to make ones, to raise the, get into, with, climb out of, put it to. Away from the house, the garden turns informal. A bird scratches the sky. Its backbone reveals. Boredom is a treatment in the tallest solarium where the hawk surveys the hills. From up there, nothing is new. Everything exhales, begin. Conjugating days as a hawk circles the plains, small mammals scurry for cover. The cactus flowers, pink upturned faces, dreaming. At noon, the red hawk preens on the steel tower, beak pointing west of the hills. I stir milk and tea, look up, and he's flown. I want to forget the day I will not remember. You counting raindrops for me. If presents were a name, I would label all those beads. Getting older, this wisdom, the taste as it vanishes. One day I could riot, the next brought me gifts of flowers and fears. The lilies you sent open like letters perfumed, a cacophony of snowy trumpets. Wiping the table, amber dust falls. On the 10th day, rain. The hawk on the tower tucks beak to chest. Almond speck in the storm's milky froth. A seed scheming its rebirth. So those were part of that collection, which we hope will be a chapbook at some point, still making the rounds. But now I want to turn to another form that I use a lot in the book. I call it a cento pantoum. I borrow lines from writers, prose writing. I've used Virginia Woolf. I've used Catherine Ann, the poet, Porter, Catherine Ann Porter, Lucille Clifton, and some of those are in this book. And you'd think that after writing a whole book of grief poems, I'd be done mourning, right? Well, grief doesn't end because neither does love. And after this book was published in 2021, I found I was still writing about those losses. And one of the things that helped me when the words weren't forthcoming was the cento, because you can borrow words and you can reform them into a new poem, and it's your poem, right? So I turned to the book of Roland Barthes, the French philosopher and essayist, who wrote something called Morning Diary. He kept this diary after his mother died. He had lived with her till her death and was just devastated when she passed. So he made it a point to write down, I think for 3 years, he wrote every day about the ebb and flow of his grief, just as a way of processing it. And yeah, I found some words there that really resonated with my experience. And I used the pantoum form to sort of embody the circularity, the obsessiveness of grief, as we talked about in workshop today. Morning Diary. Morning, a cruel country where I'm no longer afraid. The formal beginning of the long bereavement. This terrifies me. I know my morning will be chaotic. The formal beginning of the long bereavement, 18 months for a mother, a father. I know my morning will be chaotic. We don't forget, but something vacant settles in. 18 months for a mother, a father. Each of us has his own rhythm of suffering. We don't forget, but something vacant settles in. Suffering like a stone around my neck, deep inside me. Each of us has his own rhythm of suffering. This morning, the offer of lightness, suffering like a stone around my neck, deep inside me. I ask for nothing but to live in my suffering. This morning, the offer of lightness. For the first time, I decide to wear a colored scarf. I ask for nothing but to live in my suffering. I limp along through my morning. For the first time, I decide to wear a colored scarf. First Sunday morning without her. I limp along through my morning. Henceforth and forever, I am my own mother. First Sunday morning without her. Everyone is extremely nice, yet I feel entirely alone. Henceforth and forever, I am my own mother. From now on, my death would kill no one. Everyone is extremely nice, yet I feel entirely alone. This terrifies me. From now on, my death would kill no one. Mourning, a cruel country where I'm no longer afraid. Okay, so now we're down to the last two poems, and are we okay on time? I mean, I don't want to overstep. I have 2 short poems left. Okay. I just want to say that I've been really inspired by my workshop group, and I want to thank them again for staying with me through the joy, the pain, the sorrow in 3 hours of workshopping, and just sticking it out. I know it's been a long day for everyone, and I also appreciate all of you for your attention tonight, and for even though we're virtually together and not physically, I can feel your presence, and I'm very grateful for it. This poem has a Spanish title. It's taken from the movie Amores Perros, which has it's a Spanish movie. Some of you may have seen it. It has several vignettes about dogs and how, you know, owners who love dogs and their relationships and the drama that can sometimes happen. I see that Ethan has seen this movie. And so this is a love poem to my dog, but it's also ostensibly a love poem to my husband. So yeah, you figure out who's who in this poem. Amores Perros. Sometimes I love you the way my dog loves his all beef chew bone, worrying the knuckled corners from every angle, mandibles working like pistons. His eyes glaze over with a faraway look that says he won't quit till he reaches the soft marrow. His paws prop the bone upright. It slips. He can't clutch it tight enough, bite hard enough. A dog's paws weren't meant for gripping. And sometimes I love you the way my dog brushes his flank, nonchalant against my legs, then flops on the floor beside me while I read or watch TV. His heft warms. One of us is hungry, the other needs to pee, but we sit, content as wildflowers. Minutes pass, hours. All right, last poem. Okay, this is also the last poem in my book. Ellen Bryant Voigt, the brilliant founder of our program, the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson, said that it's all a revision until it's all a draft until we die and we revise. So that the corollary of that is that we'll be revising our poems for the rest of our lives, right? Well, I think it's the same with the self. We are always revising ourselves, and especially when we've gone through loss, there's a lot of revision, reinvention that goes on. So I thought I'd end with this poem called Self-Portrait as Revision. I am the storm-torn palm frond draped on the balcony wall. I am the cumin in the soup, stirring the lentils sleep. I'm the olive skeletal pit, the cat's paw, the thistle spear, the clay in the kiln cast into a small flask to hold centuries of musk. For weeks I do not sing, though I gush, an underground rill carving blindly to the sea. I succumb to thunder, the urchin's sting, the softness of moss. This is my prayer. I'm driftwood, parched in white heat, soaked in January rain. A seashell pressed to its pale grave. The wind rises, rewriting the hymnals of dunes. I am hurricaned, worn smooth again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for those amazing, beautiful, and moving poems. Join us again tomorrow night, Tuesday, August 1st at 8 p.m., when we'll hear poems from Gregory Pardlow Fellow Onye Dikachi Chinedu and 2023 Chapbook Fellow Ethan Chua. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Goodbye for now.